Hey there, guys. All right, today we are here with some Kings and Generals. I cannot remember the last time I watched a Kings and Generals video. Today we're watching Arabia Before Islam Religion, Society, Culture, Documentary. All caps. Before we dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love it if you join the Discord and follow me over at Twitch. And also, please do go check out the gaming channel here on YouTube, where I upload old stream VODs and dumb clips. Now, Arabia Before Islam. Now, this video was uploaded originally 2 years ago, which coincides with the time when I was, around the time, I think, when I was taking a early Islamic history class. Literally, if I had known they had uploaded this video back then, I would have known so much. I would have so much to say, but I'm gonna be honest with you right now. I don't remember much about pre-Islam Arabia from that class. I don't remember too much from that class. It was a good class. I learned a lot, and it helped me be a better historical writer. That's one thing, right? History classes, they kind of just there to help you be better at argumentative writing in different lenses and topics. But yeah, we'll see how much of this is maybe familiar to me from that class, if I remember much of it. We didn't really spend much time on pre-Islam Arabia. I think we spent maybe one assignment, because this was also during COVID, when we were all online. And so this would have been one of those weekly, discussion boards where it's like write up a post of a certain amount of word length and then respond to two of your classmates' posts, that kind of thing. But yeah, let's dive in. It's been so long since I watched Kings and Generals. Let's see what their videos are like. Has it been 2 years? It could have been that long. Oh shit.
The Arab world is mostly identified with Islam, and for good reason. Islam was a catalyst of the biggest expansion of the Arabic people in history. It paved the way for the establishment of arguably the most powerful empire of its time, the Islamic Caliphate, which at its zenith ranged from Spain and North Africa in the west to Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent in the east. The Caliphate managed to be one of the most dominant political, military, scientific, and cultural centers of the world for several centuries, while the religion of Islam remains one of the most important political and societal
Man, I really have not heard this man's voice in a long time.
forces globally. But what was there before Islam? How did Arab people live, rule themselves? What did they believe in? Welcome to our video on Arabia before Islam. History is often complicated, but male hygiene isn't, mostly because of the sponsor of this video, Manscaped, the global brand for men's grooming and hygiene products. Gentlemen, pre-Islamic Arabia was mostly a nomadic society, inhabited by constantly moving tribal units. These Bedouin tribes, some of which maintain their traditional nomadic lifestyle to this day, had been the most significant political unit of the Arabian Peninsula, with constantly shifting alliances, never-ending warfare, and rare occurrences of organized and centralized statehood. These tribes placed heavy emphasis on kin-related groups and families, and would roam through the deserts with their livestock.
Let's see if I remember the naming scheme. If I remember right, it is personal name into father's name to tribe to then wider culture group. Or is it just personal name, father's name? No, it's personal name, father's name, grandfather's name, tribe? Damn it, I'm forgetting.
Mainly comprising of sheep, goats, and camels, living in tents with their immediate family members. The tribal leaders enforced unwritten rules of the Bedouin society in the tribe. Bedouin tribes were patriarchal, as inheritance passed to male offspring, and women could not inherit property and were virtually rightless, as they could be seized in tribal conflicts as a spoil of war, and the Bedouin laws allowed the men to marry their captives. The number of women a man could marry was not fixed. When a man died, his son inherited all his wives, except his own mother. Women in tribal Arabia had
Oh, ancient society, man, ancient society.
little say in their marriages, as they would often be arranged between a man and his future wife's family, and the family would receive property like camels or horses in exchange for the bride. There were also cases of killing female infants, as the Muslim holy book the Quran mentions that the Arabs of the period of ignorance, called Jahiliyyah, would bury their daughters alive. The Bedouin men often considered women an economic burden and a potential source of embarrassment, as the capture of women of the tribe by hostile tribes was considered humiliating in the conservative Bedouin society. Under the circumstances of lack of centralized states, with rare exceptions, there were no written laws, courts, or law enforcement of any kind to protect the population. Thus, the principal purpose of a Bedouin tribe was to protect its members.
I love how their art style has really evolved here. This is like, this is very, art. This is an art style I really love.
Vengeance was sought for the killing of a tribe member by another tribe, which led to virtually constant warfare and conflict. Protecting your tribe and avenging your kin was a high honor. Harsh living conditions of the Arabian Peninsula further enhanced the tribal system and sense of identity within a tribe, as often their protection and economic cooperation was the difference between death and survival. French historian Maxime Redonson states that the free Arabs were bound by no written code of law, and no state existed to enforce its statutes with the backing of a police force. The only protection for a man's life was the certainty established by custom that it would be dearly bought. Blood for blood and a life for a life. The vendetta, tha'ar in Arabic, is one of the pillars of Bedouin society. Austrian historian Gustav E. von Grunebaum reiterated this and described the state of affairs in Arabia in the century before the rise of Islam as tribal guerrilla fighting, all against all. Tribes would fight against each other, attack and plunder caravans and sedentary settlements, as lawlessness was the law of the land in most of Arabia. Caravans and sedentary settlements would pay tribute to the raiding Bedouin tribes to avoid their attacks. While most of the tribes in Arabia went on with their nomadic lifestyle, some managed to gain influence over certain territories and switched to a sedentary life. Mecca was practically ruled by the skilled merchants of the Quraysh tribe that took control of the city sometime in the 5th century, while Yathrib, which was later named Medina, was dominated by the Arab tribes of Aus and Khazraj, and the Jewish tribes Natir, Kenuka, and Qurayza. While the nomadic Bedouins viewed sedentary life with contempt and thought of the town dwellers as a nation of shopkeepers, the emergence of cities like Mecca was the primary cause of the dawn of the common Arab identity in the pre-Islamic period. The most important cities of the Arabian Peninsula, Mecca and Yathrib, were situated in Hijaz, a region with sufficient water supply, which made it a logical choice for a sedentary lifestyle in the otherwise punishing climate and terrain of Arabia. Mecca was an important trade center in the region, a place through which caravans would flow, as well as the location of the Kaaba, a sacred place in Islam, which was also sacred in polytheistic Arabia, where the statues of idols and gods of different Arabic tribes were placed. The Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, who lived between 60 and 30 BC, wrote about the isolated region of Arabia in his work Bibliotheca Historica, describing Kaaba as a very holy temple, which was exceedingly revered by all Arabians. For example, the chief deity of the Quraysh tribe and Mecca was Hubal. The usual trading routes through the Red Sea and the Tigris and Euphrates were disrupted by piracy and the Roman-Persian conflict, and caravans and traders switched to the trade route going through Mecca. Goods from beyond the Red Sea, and of the local Bedouin tribes would be brought to Mecca, from where the camel caravans would transport them to the Levant. Meccans signed treaties with the Byzantine Empire and Bedouin tribes for safe passage of their trading caravans. As the home of the Kaaba, Mecca also carried a religious significance for the polytheistic Arabs, as once a year, Arabs from all over Arabia would make a pilgrimage to Kaaba and drink from the sacred Zamzam well. At this time of the year, conflict would stop, a truce would be declared, disputes and debts would be resolved, and trade happened between different tribes. Thus, Mecca became a center of a loose confederation of tribes around this city, as guests were obliged to follow the rules in Mecca. The trading potential of Mecca and its religious significance for the Arabs turned it into a factor bringing Arabs together and forming their national identity. Another important city of Arabia was Yathrib, Medina. It was an agricultural center, also situated in a fertile region of Hijaz, which allowed the city to become an important transit point for trade caravans traveling along the Red Sea. Initially, Yathrib was dominated by Jewish tribes, but gradually several Arabic tribes moved to Yathrib and gained political and economic influence in the city too. While Arabs were mainly engaged in agriculture, Jews would also be active as businessmen. The rise of cities was inevitably going to lead to the rise of commerce too, and the rise of commerce was inevitably going to lead to usury, a practice which was used by both the Arabs and Jews. This practice would be later prohibited by Islam. We already saw that even in pre-Islamic Arabia, religion played an important role in shaping the common Arab identity. What religion did the Arabs practice before the rise of Islam? Religion in pre-Islamic Arabia was a mix of polytheism, Christianity, Judaism, and Iranian religions. Arab polytheism, or paganism, was the most popular belief system. Each tribe, city, and region could have its own god or idol, which was in a way a patron of that particular community. Arabs also believed in supernatural beings like jinns. Statues of gods and goddesses would be placed in Kaaba, and some scholars argue that Allah, the deity of Islam and other Abrahamic religions, also had a statue in Kaaba. There are hadiths, the authenticity of which is disputed, claiming that Kaaba also had an image of the Virgin Mary and baby Jesus, with Abraham looking over them. Overall, it is estimated that Kaaba contained up to 360 such statues and images. Trading and political relations with the Byzantine Empire, Ethiopia, Persia, and other neighboring...
I'm guessing those statues and images were taken out once Islam was firmly established.
...forces had a role in shaping the religious landscape of Arabia too. As early as the 1st century AD, Arab traders brought Christianity to Arabia. Others were evangelized by Paul's ministry in Arabia and by St. Thomas, followed by a strong influence from the Byzantine Empire. For example, the Ghassanids, a vassal kingdom of Rome, converted to Christianity. In the south of the country, a strong Christian community emerged in Najran as a result of the influence of the Ethiopian Christian kingdom of Aksum. Nestorian Christianity was strong in parts of the country, but the most popular denomination was monophysitism. Judaism was also a significant part of the religious landscape of Arabia. As a result of Roman persecution, the migration of Jewish people to Arabia started as early as the 1st century AD. Many Jews found homes in Hijaz and towns like Yathrib, Khaybar, Fadak, and al-Qura. Many Arabs also converted to Judaism, as often it was a condition of settling in Jewish-dominated towns of Hijaz. The Yemeni Himyarite kingdom converted to Judaism in the 4th century, and some of the Kinda, a tribe in central Arabia who were the Himyarites' vassals, were also converted by the 5th century. Sources also inform about a monotheistic religion centered around the worship of a single god of the Abrahamic religions, but apparently it was not affiliated with Christianity or Judaism, and was probably centered around the prophethood of Abraham. Followers of this religion were called Hafini people, and they rejected the idolatry and paganism of the majority of Arabs, sharing some of the features of other Abrahamic religions, like the prohibition of pork. The scope of expansion of the Hafini people is unclear, but according to some Islamic sources, the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, and some of his future companions belonged to this religion. Arabia also had a small minority following Iran-based religions like Zoroastrianism, Mazdekism, and others, spreading under Persian influence. Earlier we mentioned how in the pre-Islamic period, Arab statehood was relatively rare, as Arabia constantly moved from tribal anarchy to loose state organizations and back again. But there have been a number of notable states in Arabia in the pre-Islamic period mentioned in Greek, Roman, Mesopotamian and Persian sources, and oral Arab traditions later recorded by Islamic scholars.
You're referencing oral stories? Kings and Generals, yes, thank you. Oh, I love the fact that they did that. That makes me so happy that they are taking the time to reference. We've got references to these spots in Roman written sources, Greek written sources, Mesopotamian and Persian written sources, and also they are corroborated by Arabic oral stories that were later written down. Like, thank you for, like, so many people just want to write off oral traditions, not like it's, our longest standing human tradition ever, right? It is like our first tradition, you could say, is the practice of orally recounting our history. Like yes, of course, there's going to be, drift over time with some things, but still, it was like a profession to be the oral storyteller. That was like tradition was very important to the people back then, So, right, they're not gonna like really mess up the oral stories too much. There will be, of course, drift in all oral stories all around the world, but like that's what'll happen, right? But still, they are still valid historical sources. And anyone that says otherwise doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about, and they are not a real historian.
According to the Arab classical writers, Arabs divided themselves into the Yemenites, the South Arabs descended from Qatan, and the North Arabs descended from Adnan. It is interesting that these two groups had certain distinctions, and the existence of statehood and political systems were among them. South Arabia, Yemen, had more established states, and all of them were ruled as monarchies. In the north, loose tribal confederations or de facto city-states like Mecca were a more prevalent form of statehood. Such states were ruled as oligarchies and aristocracies. The south was considered more advanced, as it was the key route of trade in Arabia, prior to the emergence of Mecca as an alternative, and had a higher degree of contact with outsiders such as Ethiopians. From the 4th century onwards, a reverse process started, as many southern tribes migrated to the north and underwent northern influence. The South Arabian script vanished, and North Arabian proliferated in Arabia. The Thamud tribe, or tribal union, was one of the first recorded states in Arabia, which was a prominent force in northwestern Arabia according to the Assyrian sources related to the 8th century BC, and were later used as auxiliary forces by the Roman Empire according to the Roman sources. In the 3rd century BC, the Greek scholar Eratosthenes mentioned Minoans, Sabaeans, Katabanians, and Hadramites as the main people inhabiting the Arabian Peninsula. Historians mention the independent Sabaean kingdom situated in present-day Yemen, which was later conquered by the Himyarite kingdom around 280 AD. The Himyarite kingdom was one of the most prominent pre-Islamic states of the Arabian Peninsula. It was ruled by a monarch, but in practice, the power of the state was shared with regional governors, which had a high degree of autonomy, a system akin to medieval-era European kingdoms. By the early 4th century AD, the Himyarite kingdom ruled over southern Arabia, and expanded north to Najran. Originally polytheistic Himyarites became monotheistic sometime in the 4th century with a belief in the Abrahamic God. At the end of the 5th century, the Himyarite king Abu Kariba adopted Judaism as his faith. His son and successor Yusuf Dunuas was even more zealous, as he started persecuting Christians living in the kingdom. This proved to be the undoing of the Himyarite dynasty, as Dunuas was either killed or committed suicide after being defeated by the Christian coalition of the Ethiopian kingdom of Aksum, the Byzantine Empire, and South Arabian Christians in 524. Christian Ethiopians then took control of South Arabia, built a church in Sana in an attempt to attract pilgrims, and hence trade to Sana in place of Mecca. This caused a conflict between Abraha, the Ethiopian viceroy in Yemen, and Mecca, mentioned in the Quran. Apparently, Abraha used war elephants against Mecca, but was unsuccessful and had to turn back. The second part of the 6th century was notable for the power struggle between Ethiopians and Sassanids for control over the remainder of the Himyarite kingdom, in which the Persian Empire succeeded. Another prominent pre-Islamic state organization in Arabia was the Kinda Kingdom, the first state in Central Arabia recorded by history, which came to existence after the Kinda tribe managed to unite all tribes in Najd around the late 5th century. The Kinda Kingdom attempted a number of successful raids on Byzantine territories in North Arabia, but similar endeavors against the Sassanid Empire failed, when in 529 the Lakhmid vassals of the Persians defeated and killed the Kindan king Alharit bin Amr, which caused the decline of this state. The aforementioned Lakhmid kingdom was established in East Arabia by the Banu Lakham tribe around the 3rd to 4th centuries. Initially, independent Lakhmids were threatening the coastal cities of the Sassanid Empire, and in 325 the Sassanid Emperor Shapur II began a campaign against them. Soon the Lakhmid capital Hira was taken under control of the Sassanids. Since then the Lakhmid kingdom became vassals of the Sassanid Empire until it was annexed by them in the early 7th century. The Ghassanid kingdom had a similar fate. Sometime in the 3rd century AD, part of the Alads tribe migrated from Yemen to the Levant and established the Ghassanid kingdom as a vassal of the Eastern Roman Empire, with a capital at Jabiyah in the Golan Heights. The Ghassanid kingdom ceased its existence in the period of early Islamic expansion. But none of these kingdoms were powerful and centralized enough to unite Arabs in one state and protect the realm from foreign attack.
Okay, I've spent a lot of time quiet. I'm just trying to follow along here. One thing that, and I mean, we're almost at the end here. We're at 19 minutes out of 20 minutes. But one thing I want to say is it's a little weird to follow along here because we are jumping back and forth in time as we go to each different tribe here in Arabia, which I don't know how I feel about that approach. I both understand and also don't like it. Right? Because in one way it is easier to follow, but in another way it is harder to follow, right? It's easier in the sense that we're not jumping around from culture to culture. We're instead looking at one tribe for an extended period of time before moving on to the next one. But then what it does is it kind of like throws me off with the dates being thrown out every like little bit, right? When we're jumping from one culture to the next, one tribe to another, we're going from like 600, 700 AD, and then we're going back to 100, 200 AD to start like over. So and what this ends up doing is it throws out a lot more years at me, and it makes me feel like I'm being overwhelmed with information when I'm necessarily not. What I think I would have preferred here is the start at like, go through time so that go century by century instead of going tribe by tribe. That way we're not constantly that way we're only saying the tribal names, which is just going to help me remember the tribes better. Like when you hear the tribes names over and over, you'll remember them. But like hearing years, different years especially, being thrown out, it gets a little confusing. Does that make any sense? I hope it makes sense. Hope I'm explaining my thought process here properly. Don't jump around in time. I feel like it's easier to jump around tribe to tribe in a um, progressive timeline, in a linear timeline, than it is to jump around from tribe to tribe in a than it is to jump around um, from time period to time period by following a linear explanation of the tribes. I think that was a better way of explaining it. Hope so.
Attack. Most of Arabia was governed by unwritten rules of Bedouin society, causing warfare and despair amidst already harsh living conditions. The pre-Islamic Arabs might have shared similar language and traditions, but they were divided by tribal identities, blood revenge, and religions. But very soon, Arabia and beyond would be transformed by a momentous process of the emergence of Islam and the creation of a unified Arabic state. More videos on ancient civilizations are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see the next video in the series. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible.
And that was Arabia before Islam. Religion, society, culture, documentary. As I said, I already talked a little bit about something I kind of disagreed with how the information was conveyed, but the the writer and historian here, Turgut Gambar and Ilkin Gambar, they did a great job of um. Now, what I'm curious is this the same writer and historian in every Kings and Generals video? Or do they change like based on which part of the world they're looking at? Because if that's the case, that's really cool. I really love that they are doing that. But I just ask that because I haven't watched Kings and Generals in a really long time. Of course, the narrator has remained the same, Devon. But yeah, I would have preferred, instead of going tribe by tribe and jumping around in years, to instead go linear in the years, but jump around from tribe to tribe and talk about like this is what's kind of like happening in this century, or this is when this tribe popped up in this century, and then move on to the next century and be like, oh, they're still here, or something like that. Maybe it wouldn't have. I don't know. I understand why they took the approach that they did. I want to make that clear. Understand. Just from my own, like it just made it harder for me to follow along, I feel like. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.